Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. It's Learning Hunt.
Today we will learn these form pseudo classes. So let's start without any further delay. So as you can see that I already create here a form here, as you can see that in my HTML page, and these are the forms codes here, and I apply some CSS in this form that is here. Okay, so let's understand our first pseudo class, that is the focus. So for applying the focus pseudo class, I write here an input. I apply the pseudo class focus pseudo class in the input tag. So as you know, these are the input tags here. These are the input tags. Okay, so I apply in that portion, I apply the pseudo class with the help of focus. So I write here input and the focus. Okay, so after that I write here, just like when I click this input, when I focus these input, the first name input, or when I focus the last name input, then these CSS classes will apply. So I write here the background color is red. Okay, and the color will become the white here, and border I apply 3 pixel solid and green. Okay, when I save this file and here I refresh my page, now in what input I click here, just like I click this first input. When you click this first, then you can see that when you focus the first name input or last name input, then this CSS property will apply in this input. You can write, as you can see that here, what you write, this color will be red. In that way you can apply the focus pseudo class. So but you cannot apply this focus pseudo class in radio button. As you can see that in radio button there are not up there, in the radio button this pseudo class, this CSS property is not apply here. So for that you have to write here the next pseudo class, that is checked. Okay, here when you write this checked, then just like I delete this property and save this file, and here refresh my page. Now when you click this, then you can see that your border is not applying in the radio button or the check button here, not applying. Why? Because in the radio button in the radio button the border is not applying. So for that you can apply here the box shadow property here. So here I write the box shadow, and I give here the 6 pixel from the X, and not 6 pixel, I give the 0 0, and for the spread I want the 8 pixel spread, my color, that is green. Okay, now here when I save this file and refresh my page, now when you click this, then you can see that a box shadow property is applied in this radio button here. If you click what you click here, in also check button is also apply, in which check button you click, this box shadow property is apply in this check button. Okay, you can also apply this plus, you can also apply the for the particular one, just like here for the attribute you can use here the attribute selector. For that you give here the big bracket here. Now write here the type, the type is equal to radio. If you write here the type is equal to radio, then this will apply for only the radio button. When you click, now you can see that this is applied for radio button, but when you click the check box, then it's not applying this pseudo property. Okay, you can also apply in this pseudo property, just like here, right here the checkbox. Okay, now when you save this file and refresh your page, now when you click this, then this box shadow property you can apply in your checkboxes. Okay, so our next pseudo class is the disabled or enabled. So just like I make some input is disabled in my form, so I make this password input, I make the disabled. So in the input I write here disabled. Okay, when I save this file and refresh my page, now here you can see that I cannot click in the password input and I cannot write something in the password because these inputs are disabled. So you can apply some CSS with the help of disabled and tell your form user to these inputs are the disabled inputs. You cannot write something here. Okay, so for that I write here, I just delete this and write here the disabled, disabled, and I give the background color is red and the same, and color will become the white, and the border color I want is 3 pixel solid green. Now I save this file, and when you refresh your page, then here you can see that your disabled input is you apply some CSS in your disabled input. In that way you can tell your user that these inputs are disabled. Okay, and in that way the enable is used the oppositely, totally opposite. That just if you write here the enabled, then this CSS is applied for all enabled input except this, except this input, this disabled input. Here if you write here enable, now you can see that except the password input, this CSS property is applied to all your input. You can write something here what you want, you can give some number and what. Okay, now our next pseudo property is required or optional. So there in this form the default one is all the values are here is the optional. You have to give required in their value. Okay, so I just give here in the first name, I delete this disabled input. Okay, here now I give in the first name input, here is the first name input, I write here the required. Okay, so this first name input is required. So when I refresh my page, now here you can see that this for the enable property is applied here. Now you can type in this enable property. So what I understand here, that is the required of. Okay, so for required you can also apply some CSS in your required property. So if you write here the required, okay, when you save this file and refresh your page, then except the first name, all inputs are become normal because the first name is the required. You have to fill this out in your form because this is the required, and with the help of this required pseudo classes you can tell your form user to you have to fill these inputs because it's required. You can apply some CSS to tell your users, and the optional is, if you write here the optional, then except the first name, all inputs are become the optional because the rest of that are the optional except the first name. Here as you can see that. Okay, so in that way you can tell your user that what is the optional what is the optional value here and what is the required input. You have to fill it. Okay, so our next pseudo class is inrange or outrange. So this inrange and outrange is applied for the number. So for that I create here the age section, and in the age section I already give here the minimum and maximum age limit here. As you can see that the minimum is 18 and maximum is 28. I can also reduce this, that this is the minimum is 18 and the maximum is just like 38. Okay, I save this part and refresh my page here. Now I apply some the in range property, that when your value is in range, then these CSS will apply of that input. Okay, so in range. So here I refresh my page. Now in the in range, I give here, when you give the wrong information, just like I give here the my age limit is from 10 to 38, just but there I write here the 5. So for that, because of that, this CSS is not applied, because this 5 is the out of range. But when you write here the in range, just like 28, sorry, RNG, in range, just like when you write here the 28, then this CSS property is applied in your age input. Okay, and the totally opposite of that, the out of range is walk. Here when you write the out of range, and when your I refresh my page, now when I write here the out of range value, just like the my age limit is 10 to 38, so I write here the out of range value just like 5, then you can see that this CSS property is applied in my age input. So in that way you can use the in range and out range pseudo class to tell your from user that these value are the in range and these value are the out of range. So our next pseudo class is the read only and read write. So I write here the read only. Okay, and I make some input here to read only, just like I make the last name into the read only. I write here the read only. When I save this file and refresh my page, then this pseudo class is applied to read only input. You cannot write something here, or you cannot write, you can just read this input or information. For write, you can also give here the value, just like I write here the value and tell this input is only for read. Okay, now I save this file and refresh my page. Now you can see that this input is only for read, you cannot write in this section. So with the help of read only pseudo class, you can apply some CSS in that type of input. Okay, and if you write here the read write, then this CSS property is applied for the rest of this, because the all of this are the read write input. You can read or you can write here in this form. Okay, here, but this CSS property is not applied of this last name input, because this is only the read only input. Okay, so our next one is the valid and invalid input. So just like when you give some value that is the valid, so you can apply in on that input to tell your user that this value is the valid value. And when your form user is give the invalid value, then you can tell that this is the invalid property. So at first I write here the valid. Okay, now I save this file and refresh my page here. Okay, and I remove this the value and the read only here. Okay, now I save this file and refresh my page here, and this is the required. I also refresh this. Now as you can see that these all are the valid, that's why it's make it's apply in this input or apply this CSS. But when you give here the invalid value, just like I write here the ling learning hunt. So as you can see that this email ID is not a valid email ID, because in this email ID there are not @ sign. But when you write here the @gmail.com, then here you can see that this is the valid value. Now this CSS is applied for this valid value here, and in the opposite, the invalid value is walk. Okay, when you save this file and refresh your page, now you give here the invalid value, just like I write here the ling learning, and now you can see that this is the invalid value, because in this email ID there is not the @ sign. So you can see that this CSS property is applied in this input text. Okay, so in that way you can apply some valid and invalid to apply some CSS. Now the next pseudo property is the default. So just like when I want to in this gender that the male is have to default, you have to give any default value. Just like when your form user is not forget to give some information in that, then in this form there the default value is taken. Just like here I give the English is a default value. Just like I write here this value to be checked. When I save this file and refresh my page, now you can see that this is the default value is already taken by the form. Okay, you can unselect this, but when you refresh your page, now you can see that this value is already selected. Okay, now this is the for this property you can also apply some CSS property in this default value. So for that I write here the default, and I apply some box shadow for that, because this is the radio or check box button. So I write here the box shadow property and giving the 0 0 and the 8 pixel, and the color I want, that is the green. Here when I save this file and refresh your page, now you can see that you can apply this box shadow CSS property in this the default value of the checkbox button. Okay, so here now you can see that this default value is already work when you unselect this. So I unselect this the English subject. Okay, so these are the form pseudo class. So I hope you understand how can you use the form pseudo class. So this is for today. If you learned something today, then give a thumb, press the bell icon, subscribe my channel to get more.